So in the last sections, we set up our routes for the posts and comments. In this section, we'll set up our routes for the user profile data. And we'll only need 3 routes. One to save the user profile data to the database, one to get all the user's posts associated with the user, and one to get the actual user profile data from the database. So let's start with the user profile to database, our post request. So we can set this up in the same way as we've been seeing so far, with the /API/post/user profile to DB, and then a reqres next arrow function as the second argument. And then we'll save all our user profile data in a const called values. And this user profile data is not only coming from our React end, but also Auth0. So our React frontend is getting the data from Auth0, which is then passing on here to our Express server. So this is the rationale again behind this is the user should not have to submit their own profile data to the database to save it. And then the SQL query we need is the very basic one. It's just insert into users, and then our username, email verified, and date created, and then the values as we've seen. And we also need on conflict do nothing. And this prevents a user from having their user profile data saved more than once into the database. Because remember, we're going to call this route every time the auth check component is called from our React frontend, because we want the user profile data every time a user logs in. But we also save the user profile data in the auth check component as well. So to avoid saving the user profile data to the database every time a user logs in, we do on conflict do nothing. And this ensures that our user data is not saved twice to the database. And after this, we just do comma values and then the query, the QR and QRES arrow function. And this is it. We're done setting up this route to save the user profile data to the database. And next we have a route to get the user profile data from the database. So we can just copy and paste and then change router.post to router.get, and then also update the API route name to get. And we're going to be looking up this user with their email. So we can save their email with rec.body.email, and then we stringify it. We make it a string because that's how it's saved in the database. And next, our SQL query will be select all from users where email equals $1 and comma, and then we pass in the email to the array and another comma, and we have our usual query arrow function. And finally, we just need the route to get all the users' posts that are associated with a certain user. So when a user visits their profile page, they'll have all their posts available to them where they can edit and delete it. And we'll look up the post associated with the user ID. Because remember, in our post table, we have a user ID field that references the user ID. So each post has the user ID of the user that submitted it. And in the same way, we can stringify and save the user ID in a user ID const. Then our SQL query is just going to be select all from post where the user ID equals $1. And remember, user ID is a user ID column in the posts table, because we're selecting from post. But user ID is also the unique primary key in the users table. They're both the same value. The user ID in the posts table is just being referenced as a foreign key, which is what allows us to have relations in a relational database. And then comma, and then we just pass in user ID to the array. And after that, we have our usual query arrow function. And this is it. This is all we need. We completely set up our skeleton Express app, and we have all the routes we need for a functioning blog. In the next section, we'll set up our front end to work with this Express server.